What up, everybody, and welcome to the Ultimate Patriots podcast. I am your host, Dr. Dennis Tian, recording remote tonight from my office in Dedham, Massachusetts, joined by the CEO of HedgeBetter, Justin Fine. We have an awesome episode planned for everyone. Thank you so much for checking us out. We are going to take maybe a medium dive, Justin, I'd call it. I can't call it a deep dive into free agency, but there's been so much happening in the NFL the last week. So we're going to get into all of it in Foxborough and all around the NFL. We usually record an episode right before free agency. We weren't able to do that this year, and that is because my father, Dennis Tian Sr., passed away. He is largely responsible for why I am a football fan and a Patriots fan. We've been season ticket holders since 1992, so it was a tough couple weeks for me. But so we weren't able to record, but just want to acknowledge that because, hey, if it wasn't for my dad, I don't know if I would be into football like I am.
Yep, that's right. Uncle Den, he will be loved and missed. Honestly, ton of love and respect and admiration I've always had for my uncle. And I think, with his services this past week, I think that was just on full display how admired he was by his friends, his family, his community, the legacy he left behind. So he will be missed. Great guy.
No question about it. Great guy. Absolutely will be missed. Terrific human being, terrific father, and brought me to my first Patriots game, Justin, in 1989. Yeah, I was probably way too young. I mean, Foxborough Stadium was like it's not like Gillette is now where you could bring a kid there. That was like the wild, wild west back then. There was absolutely no security. There was fights. There was drunkenness. There was drug use. I mean, it was an absolute madhouse back then. But we had a great time, and we fell in love with football in some of the worst years, really, in the history of the Patriots franchise. And I would say, in particular, in 1991, the Patriots went 6-10 with Hugh Millen and Coach Dick McPherson. But we had a ball that year, and got season tickets in 1992, and the rest is history.
It is, and you know what? I think it gives you a perspective that people like me, my generation, don't have, because obviously, our coming of age was when the Patriots dynasty first started to get started, right? So, a lot of my earliest memories are Super Bowls and winning and being on top of the NFL, right? But, a lot of fans like you had to put in the work. You had to stick with them for a while and get through the bad to get to the good.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely true. I think the people a little bit older than me, actually, I would say more so, because I kind of caught the tail end of that. And by the time I really popped online, 91, 92 wasn't good, but then they drafted Bledsoe in 93. And the 90s for the Patriots were actually a really good time to be a Patriots fan. I mean, they didn't win a Super Bowl, but they were good. Yeah. They won divisions. They made playoffs. They were always entertaining. They were always interesting. But you're right. I mean, definitely, the memories of those first couple years do still linger back here. And always made me appreciate, my father and I, we watched the greatest dynasty in the history of modern professional sports from our seats in Gillette Stadium. We went to pretty much every game, 2 Super Bowls, watched every road game at home together. Yep. So, we really did get to see it all, and just such an amazing run for this franchise.
It is, and now it's a tradition you get to carry on with your sons, right? And keep that train rolling.
110%. And my oldest son Denny is already well known in at our section in Gillette Stadium.
And he knows about more than football than I do. For he knows more about football than I do. It's crazy.
He really does. Yeah, he's on a Belichickian level of football knowledge right now. All right, well, let's get to this. I mean, we got a lot to get to with the free agency stuff with the Pats, and I think this is going to be good because I feel like it sounds like we have differing takes on this Patriots free agency class. So I like what this Patriots team did in free agency. I'll get into the reasons why I like what they did and what I like about this free agency class, but I'm going to give the floor to you to kick it off today, Justin, and just tell us what you don't like, because from what I hear from you, it sounds like you're not too thrilled.
I'm not too thrilled. Look, I'd be lying if I said I hate it. I don't hate it, but I don't love it. I don't love it nearly as much as I've heard a lot of the mainstream media and some of the local pundits in the Boston sports atmosphere. I saw on social media the other day, guys giving them their grades, and some of the prominent ones like Michael Hawley and some of the other beat writers giving them A-, B+, A's, and that just didn't resonate with me. And I'll give you a few reasons why. I think you let some guys walk out the door that you could have kept for cheap money that played integral roles in your Super Bowl run last year, and that were a big part of the culture, right? There was a lot, I think, of room for improvement on that offense. But that defense at the end of the year was a Super Bowl caliber defense. They were a top elite defense in the NFL. And a lot of that was the culture, I think, as well as the talent. You let starting guys like Jalen Hawkins walk. You let guys like K'Lavon Chaisson walk, right? You replace K'Lavon Chaisson with Draymond Jones, who, from what I hear, is pretty good, but I don't know if the talent level is that different that you couldn't have assigned Chaisson to a similar contract, kept that continuity going. Hawkins, a guy who, was kind of in the prime of his career, you let him walk for a 33-year-old 1-year rental in Kevin Byard. I know Byard has historically been pretty good, former Vrabel guy, but turned 33 in August. And then a guy like Khyiris Tonga, who I thought was a really good depth piece for that defense. He kind of left for short money. And we still might lose some guys like Jack Gibbons and a few of the depth pieces in that defense. So for that reason, I really don't love what happened on the defense. And then on the offensive side of the ball, look, I got to say, Romeo Doubs is a good receiver. I think he's a 1A. I don't think he's a bona fide 1, right? And I think you're going to get more longevity out of Doubs than you would of Stephon Diggs. But I think you downgrade the leadership. Stephon Diggs was clearly the leader on that team last year. And I just want to bring up the clutch factor. I think back to that Buffalo game. I think back to that 4th down in Tampa. I think to some of those plays that Stephon Diggs made where he just showed that he has those hands of glue. And I don't know if on a consistent basis I expect Romeo Doubs to make those clutch plays in addition to the loss of leadership. He's certainly more of a quiet guy. You can tell even from just his press conference in his intro to Foxborough, the demeanor is totally different. And then Elijah Vera Tucker, look, that could be a high upside play, but you bring in a guy who's only played in 50% of his possible games since he came into the NFL. So realistically, I think you let some culture walk out the door. I don't think you made some huge upgrades in talent. And realistically, you still didn't address the 2 biggest holes that we said that you had, which was tackle and a bona fide number 1 wide receiver. So for those, and I know the draft is still to come, and there's still things you can do through trade and whatnot. But for those reasons, I'm not ready to give the Patriots a stamp of approval.
See, I disagree. I think a lot of what you said is true. I understand some of the concerns you have, but this is what I think you're missing on this one. And that is perfect deals, really good deals, low risk players do not make it to free agency. And if they do, the price for them is literally extreme through the roof. So anywhere you go in free agency, you're going to have to take on a little risk and uncertainty. I look at the way they approached this class, and I think they took smart gambles. I think they took calculated risks. I think they addressed positions of need. I agree with you that number 1 receiver is still a big need, but I have thoughts about that we'll get to. I do think it's a little overrated. I like the players they bought in. I like the way they built the middle of this roster up, because I think that is a huge problem for this roster. I mean, I like Romeo Doubs. I would rather take my chances with Romeo Doubs and his upside than invest in a player like Stephon Diggs, who I think is on the major decline. Now, you just referenced 2 plays when you were talking about Diggs. One of them was in Tampa Bay. That was November 9th. The other one was in Buffalo. That was in October. Stephon Diggs fell off the map in December and January for the most part. And that was a lot because of his injury situation. He was not the same player this year, and he got worse as the year went on. And oh, by the way, he has major character issues. You're playing with fire with this guy. You got the best out of him for 1 year. So I have zero problem walking away from Stephon Diggs at this point. I love bringing in Doubs, a guy with upside, maybe a little bit of a distressed asset in Green Bay, a guy you can use more, a guy that's great in the red zone, and a guy that's great against man-to-man coverage. Those were 2 of their biggest problems last year. So I think it's a great signing with upside. You have to take gambles on players like Romeo Doubs if you're going to hit big in free agency, because that's it. You're not going to get a true number 1. You're not getting Justin Jefferson most years or someone like that. So you've got to take those chances. I like Draymond Jones. I think he's an upgrade over Chaisson. I think he's a more stable, reliable player. I like Byard because I think he's an upgrade over Jalen Hawkins. I know he's older, but he was a all-pro, not even a Pro Bowl, an all-pro safety. He's going to come in for the short term and plug a hole. And I like Elijah Vera Tucker. It's a gamble that he can stay healthy, but they have Ben Brown right behind him, who can start and played well last year. And oh, by the way, bringing in Vera Tucker, really, it upgrades them at two positions on their offensive line, because you bring in Tucker to play guard. That means you can move Wilson to play center, which is where he belongs. He was out of position last year. And oh, by the way, Elijah Vera Tucker has played tackle for the Jets in his career. So when we talk about needing that insurance policy for Will Campbell, don't forget that was part of the rationale, I think, that they went to Vera Tucker, because if Campbell gets in trouble this year, you got Moses, Onwenu, and Vera Tucker on this roster. You got three guys now that can play tackle if Campbell doesn't develop. I also like the fullback because I want them to run the ball. I like that they brought in a blocking tight end that's like a lineman, because I think that's still further role for them. And I'm okay with the players they lost. I don't think they really lost anyone that moves the needle. The Kyrie's Tonga loss stings a little. He was a good player for them this year, but I think he's replaceable. So I do like the class. I give it an A- or a B+. I'm totally okay if they do nothing else. I like the class they brought in.
Well, I think, you know what, I think you're going to have to see what they do in the draft, obviously, to follow this up, right? Because I don't think that this roster is totally done yet, right? I would like to see them maybe bring in another young offensive lineman, potentially another young wide receiver. There's some good options that should be available in the back of the first round, beginning of the second round, you know, where the Patriots will be making their pick. So we'll see. I don't disagree with anything you said. I really don't dislike any of the players. To me, it just didn't blow me away as like being obvious upgrades across the board. I think you have some risky situations, not necessarily risky, but you took some risks, and you have to see if they pay off. You took some risks,
but that's what you have to do. Like, you know, what do you think is a bigger risk? Signing Alex Pierce at $30 million or Romeo Doubs at $20 million?
Let me tell you, I am so glad we didn't break the bank for Alec Pierce. I thought that was one of the worst signings of free agency. I can't believe he got paid as much as he did. I'm pretty sure he broke a record for free agent wide receiver signings. Yeah. I didn't think he deserved that.
No, he definitely didn't deserve it. And I think, you know, look, we're in a free agency class to that point where, like, the best, when the best target, the best free agent is Alec freaking Pierce, and he's getting $30-something million a year. That says it all about the landscape. And like, so you've got to take a chance on a guy like a Dobbs. I'd rather take a chance on a young guy. When I heard them sign a Romeo Doubs, you know what I thought of? How about Wes Welker? What the hell was Wes Welker before he came to New England? He was a distressed asset being wasted in Miami, and he came here and he found great success. Drake May is a kingmaker. I believe that. Drake May will make mediocre wide receivers really good, just like Aaron Rodgers, just like Brady, just like Josh Allen does. The key is you have to protect him. And I think that they have to rebuild this offensive line. And I think they took steps towards that in this class too.
Well, look, I don't think there's a question about it. If Vera Tucker stays healthy, I think that'll be a home run for them, right? It's just the guy's just got really poor. He's just got poor injury history. But, you know, look, we've seen crazier things. We've seen guys, you know, kind of re-kickstart their career and rebuild their career after numerous bad injuries. So, look, I hope the guy is able to come in and play meaningful snaps, because, like you said, he can play multiple positions. He's clearly talented. He's young. And actually, to go back to the wide receivers for a second, I saw just recently before hopping on the podcast that there's still a chance they might bring Stephon Diggs back. I heard the negotiations were opening back up there. So I mean, if you could go Diggs, Booty, and Doubs as your three, and then mix in guys like Chisholm and in Douglas and what's his name, big tall guy.
See, I don't even know if I want Diggs back, and forget the whole off the field piece, but I think that is a consideration on him. I mean, he's kind of a mess off the field. Fine. If he was a great player, maybe it doesn't matter. I really felt like he was not dynamic for like the last 2 or 3 months of the season. And I think that had a lot to do with his age and his injury history. I often wonder if he really made a mistake by coming back for week one. You know, when you see he just kind of was his best in September and October, and it really felt like he fell off the map late in the season. So I just feel like he's a player in decline. I'm kind of skeptical of even bringing him back under any terms is a good idea.
Well, I did really like the leadership that he brought. And I know a guy like him, he's volatile, right? That could change at any point. I think, you know, I point to that game in Baltimore because I think that's where the switch flipped for him. And I remember I believe it was the first half of that game, he caught a deep ball from May in the sidelines. It was a fantastic catch, but he got his clock cleaned and he came up, you know, kind of holding that collarbone afterwards. And that to me was kind of like the turning point for him in the season. I think that was really when things went downhill. Who knows if there was an injury that was never really disclosed, or, you know, he was pretty banged up after that. We'll see. I mean, look, if they lose Stephon Diggs, not the worst thing in the world. I guess my point is just that, you know, I like Romeo Doubs. I think he has potential here, but if at this point in time, I can't say they have their bona fide number one guy that they compare with Drake May for the next couple of years.
They definitely don't have a bona fide number one guy on this roster, and it's a gaping need. But I think, as Elliot Wolf said in his comments yesterday, if you heard them, half the teams in the league don't have that guy. They have the quarterback, Justin. They have the quarterback, and he's going to make these receivers better. I think this team can win without a number one guy. And look, would I love them to grab a number one receiver? Obviously, I would love them to grab a number one wide receiver, whether it's a drafting one or we're going to talk about A.J. Brown in a second. But I don't feel like they desperately need a wide receiver. And I'll go so far as to say this, like, I think for the first time in a long, long time with this franchise, and maybe you agree with this, maybe you don't, but for the first time in a long, long time with this Patriots franchise, this roster is good enough that they don't have to really go into this draft in April drafting for need. And I think that's a great place for them to be, because let's face it, pretty much every draft for the last 6-7 years, they've gone in with gaping holes on this roster. And they didn't always fill them, by the way, which is why sometimes they suck. But I think for once, you move into this draft and say, I can draft the best available players.
Yeah, 100%. And you know, to play my own devil's advocate for a second, you know, I think back to, you know, the Patriots dynasty over that 2+ decade span, and outside of Randy Moss, you know, they really never had a true number one wide receiver, right? For a lot of it, Julian Edelman was number one guy. Edelman, great receiver, but I don't think a lot of people thought of him as like a prototypical number one, right? You know, you look around the league. You know, there are some teams with two number ones. I think of like the Cowboys with Lamb and Pickens. I think about the Bengals with Chase and Higgins. You know, what have they done? They haven't accomplished much, right? The Justin Jeffersons of the world,
Jordan Addison,
Jordan Addison, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Jameson Williams. Like, there's tons of teams with bona fide ones and two number ones, and you know, really. We haven't seen them make much noise. So to play my own devil's advocate, I don't think the Patriots definitely need a bona fide number one. But there seemed to be a lot of hype going into this offseason that they were going to make a push for one.
Yeah, there is. And I just think this was a year where, look, is it ever a good year where you're desperate for number one receivers? These guys don't grow on trees, but I think even relatively speaking, this was probably a tough year to really need an impact receiver. There just weren't a lot of guys available. I mean, we should talk about A.J. Brown, because I think that's a name that's still coming up and very much appears like alive. I have a lot of thoughts about this A.J. Brown situation, and let me just give you my take on that, which is that, look, I don't even know if I want A.J. Brown.
I agree.
I know he's a big name. He's aging. He has a bad knee. His cap number is insanely huge, and he's had personality issues in the locker room. I know he has a relationship with Vrabel. My sense is Vrabel will probably get the best of him, at least in the short term. But I don't see where and how the Philadelphia Eagles think that player is worth even a first-round pick in this market, let alone multiple picks. It doesn't make sense to me. I am 1,000% okay. In fact, I would advise the Patriots to give up nothing more than like a mid-round draft pick, a third-round pick for A.J. Brown, and take that cap number if you want. But you're not giving up a first or a second-round pick for a guy like that. I'm sorry.
I totally agree. I really haven't been in on A.J. Brown at any point this offseason. I don't want him. And to be completely honest, this might sound crazy to a lot of people, but at this point in time, at this point in their careers, given everything I've seen, I want Kayshon Boutte playing those snaps over AJ Brown. Kayshon Boutte has shown me that he is, he's a playmaker. He kind of is similar to me, to AJ Brown in terms of, kind of his play style. And I would just I'd rather somebody like that, to be completely honest, because, if AJ Brown comes in, you have Brown and Dubs, that means Boutte has to take a back seat. Right. And so I think I'd rather Kayshon Boutte than AJ Brown at this point.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd go that far. Like, I would love AJ Brown on this roster. Don't get me wrong, but I just think at the price and that cap number, forget about it. Like, you walk away with the Philadelphia Eagles, do they think the rest of the NFL is stupid? Like, everybody knows you can't bring this guy back into your locker room. You're playing a game of chicken that you're going to lose. He's got a huge cap number. He's on the decline. You can't bring this guy back. He doesn't get along with the quarterback. Like, the game is up. Don't blink, Mike Vrabel. Do not blink in this game of chicken. And if you don't get AJ Brown, if he ends up somewhere else or he ends up whatever, that's totally fine. But you don't overpay for this guy with a bum knee, and I would add on to all of that potentially. It would not be a good move. Like, it's okay to pass on AJ Brown.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, to your point, their second round pick is basically a third round pick at this point. If you wanted to throw a flyer and get him for a second or third round pick, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, but I by no means, am excited about him coming here or saying the Patriots have to go. You could
twist my arm maybe into giving that number 31 pick in the second round, because, like you said, it's almost a third rounder. But the idea, the Philadelphia's asking for like a multiple firsts or a first and a second. Are you out of your mind? Like, good luck with that. Bring him back and watch your locker room fall apart again, Philadelphia. That's fine. The Patriots are going to be fine next year and good next year, with or without Brown. Now, if they bring in Brown and they get the best from him,
right,
then that could be a home run. But you can't mortgage the future for a player like that. He's not that kind of a player anymore.
No, he's not. And I think you still have some good receivers on this roster. And from everything I've seen, there's still going to be some good receivers available at the back of the first round. Guys like Omar Cooper, I think from Indiana, and a few others that people are talking about could be available. I'd rather bring in a young guy like that and give him a chance than trade at this point for AJ Brown and hope that he can, stay healthy and that his attitude won't be a problem here.
So what is your draft wish list right now, Justin? Let's talk very briefly. We've gotten, I think, free agency is like, what, the majority, 80-90% over. You might see a few players move at this point, but generally we kind of know where everything has ended up. So now the draft is about a month and a few weeks away. What are you going to that draft saying the Patriots need right now?
Honestly, if going into the draft, I think the Patriots, I think they can take a flyer maybe on another wide receiver. I'd love to see them beef up the offensive line and bring in a young tackle, right? Maybe go tackle in the first round, receiver in the second, or vice versa. But that's really where I want to see the help. I want to see them spend those early round picks at wide receiver and on the offensive line, and then really maybe beef up the rest of your depth in the later rounds in the defensive side of the ball. But I mean, you got your quarterback, you got your running backs, right? You got the core, of that team. I think I think you got to take a flyer in the tackle in receiver position, and then just
I totally agree with that. I think the priority going into the draft should be tackle, receiver, and I'm going to throw one more position at you: tight end.
Sure.
Tight end is a position we haven't even mentioned yet. We talked about Hill, the one they signed, but he's kind of a niche player. Hunter Henry is aging. Austin Hooper signed elsewhere. This team is in desperate need of a good pass-catching young tight end to pair up with Drake May. So I think they are in a position of somewhat comfort and strength this year compared to years past, where like you take the best available receiver, lineman, or tight end, I think, and you roll with it. But that's how I would approach this draft. Yeah.
I like that. Look, I love Hunter Henry, but I think he's nearing the end of his prime, right? And so, I really was hoping the Patriots were going to have a chance at somebody like a Kyle Pitts.
He stayed in Atlanta.
Right, he stayed in Atlanta. He got franchise tagged. There really weren't a ton of tight ends on the move this offseason anyway. So they really didn't have much opportunity to do anything. So yeah, I think maybe and look, tight ends, you've seen it. You can snag a really good tight end in rounds like 2 through 4 in the draft. So yeah, I think it's definitely a good opportunity for them.
100% agree. You anything else you want to add about this Pats free agency class, Justin? Did we miss anything?
No, I don't think we missed anything, but I've heard a couple of rumors. Obviously I'd be curious to see what your thoughts are on this, but I'm hearing that the Patriots are still trying to work a blockbuster trade with the Browns for Myles Garrett. I don't know if there's legs to that.
Wow.
What would your thoughts be if you
My
heard?
thoughts would be that he's the kind of guy that you give up big draft capital for.
So what I had heard was this year's first and third and next year's first for Myles Garrett. That's what I heard was being discussed.
I would do that. Would you do that?
I would, especially because this year's first is basically a second round pick,
Right.
So
when you talk about that, and I'm just thinking about the Rams, who have like consistently been a good team, and they've sort of for the last really about 6 or 7 years now, they've kind of had this screw the draft mentality where they trade their draft picks and they bring in established players, and they seem to find guys in the later rounds of the draft to kind of even it out, and then they're bringing in all these established guys and they're paying them. But that is a model that does seem to be working successfully. So yeah, if you could trade a couple first round picks, but you're bringing in a proven, established, bona fide elite pass rusher in the prime of his, really a generational player in the prime of his career, I think that's the kind of thing, you do give up multiple first round picks for a guy like that, not freaking AJ Brown.
Exactly. I mean, imagine what somebody like Myles Garrett could do when you got pressure from Barmore and Williams coming up the middle. I mean, it would it would turn that defensive front into an absolute nightmare. It's already great, but that would just be, I think the icing on the cake. So we'll see. I've heard that if it was going to be done, it would be done by Saturday night. So stay tuned, I guess. Wow. Yeah.
That would be insane. That would be insane. That would be your best call since you pulled Brock Purdy as the guy who liked the draft a few years ago. If that happens, I mean, it would be insane. I think the other thing, I'll give you one more Patriots take, and I'm just looking at this roster and how it's constructed. There was a salary cap bonus that had to be paid to Christian Barmore by 4:00 today. And I think a lot of people were wondering if the Pats were going to cut Barmore today. Well, they didn't. He's still on the roster, so they paid him the bonus. And it's probably a safe bet that he's going to be on the team at this point. But I will give you one guy that I think could be a surprise cut in advance of training camp, and that's Mike Onwenu. I think that with signing Vera Tucker, Onwenu's got a huge cap number. He's a good player. I'm not saying I would favor this. By the way, I think they should keep him because I think they need to protect Drake May at any and all costs. But that said, if I'm trying to think outside the box of a surprise cut that could still happen here, or a surprise move, I would just put my antennas on that.
Well, you know what? I hope not, for the reasons you just said. Look, if there's one area in this football team where I'm okay with potentially overspending and having a little bit extra insurance, it's the offensive line. I mean, you got a quarterback who we think has the opportunity to be great. We need him to stay healthy. I know you have the opportunity in the draft to maybe replace him, but I hope Onwenu's still in this team heading into week 1. Yeah,
same here, 100% same here. But I just know it's a big cap number and a big cash bonus for him coming up. He's got a huge cap number. All right, let's move to around the league. Unless you got anything else.
No, yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. So much we could say about things around the league. I think I want to talk some about I think the biggest story is, without question, the Max Crosby thing. I got a lot to say about that. Yeah. But before we even get to that, let me just give you a take on what I saw the last few weeks in free agency. And it really ties into the Super Bowl a little bit this year, which is Sam Darnold and what the Seattle Seahawks were able to do with Sam Darnold this year, which is win a Super Bowl with a good but not great quarterback.
Yeah.
And I think that what that proves, and I would also add last year too, the Philadelphia Eagles did the same. They won a Super Bowl with a good but not great quarterback. So that's 2 years in a row. And I think what you're seeing, Justin, around the league is you're seeing hope for 12 to 15 franchises now that don't have franchise quarterbacks in the traditional sense, but still feel like that they're a player or two or three away from being a Super Bowl team. And I'm going to give you a couple moves that may sound crazy now, but Sam Darnold sounded crazy a couple years ago too. How about Tua Tagovailoa to Atlanta? And I know that sounds nuts because we all have our opinion of him, but that's a stacked Atlanta team. If Sam Darnold can win a Super Bowl, why can't Tua win a Super Bowl with a stacked Atlanta team, right? How about Kyler Murray to Minnesota? Ditto that. How about Daniel Jones to Indianapolis? How about Mike Evans to San Francisco to back up Brock Purdy? How about David Montgomery to the Texans to back up CJ Stroud? I think you're seeing a lot of teams that feel emboldened or hopeful that they can win a Super Bowl even though they don't have a great quarterback and are trying to make those moves to be the next Seattle.
Yeah, you are, and I will say the one consistent with those teams are the fact that, and especially this is true with what we saw recently in the Eagles in the Seahawks. They both had elite defenses, and they both had a certified number one playmaker. Right? Think about the Eagles with Saquon Barkley in that defense, and then the Seahawks with JSN and that defense. Right? So I think there is kind of a formula for if you are going to be successful with a mediocre quarterback, you got to have a great defense. You got to have some good playmakers. So to your point, though, there are a bunch of teams in the league that I think fit that mold. I'll give you one that I think, some people might be surprised to hear, but I kind of love what they've been doing in free agency. They have a ton of assets to add to beef up that roster in the draft. Their defense has gotten way better, and they have a bunch of weapons on offense. It's the Dallas Cowboys. I still think Dak Prescott is not a bad quarterback. You got that 1-2 combination of CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, and they've made sneakily a lot of great moves to beef up that defense since trading away Micah Parsons. That could be a sneaky team to watch out for too. But again, that fits the mold. Good defense, playmakers, average to above average quarterback. There are a lot of teams like that.
1,000%. I like that call with Dallas, and Dallas has really rebuilt the lines, and they've continued to make moves to beef up their lines, including this year on both sides of the ball. I wonder what your thoughts are on the Tua Tagovailoa move, but I love that move for Atlanta. And I know that Tua is not a great quarterback, but I think the problem why Tua got cut in Miami is more because of the contract they signed him to and the insane cap number, and it just him not being good enough to justify the amount they were paying him. I don't think Tua is a bad quarterback. He may be an average quarterback, but he's not a bad quarterback. And, you put a guy like that on an Atlanta team with a Kyle Pitts and a Drake London and that defense, which was really good this year. And I do think all of a sudden in a really bad NFC South division, I think you have a division contending type team in Atlanta.
Yeah, I love that spot for Tua because, like you said, he's got all the weapons of the world between London, Pitts, and Bijan Robinson, right? The Falcons have a good offensive line, a weak division, in a good defense. And let's not forget, Tua's biggest, I think, issue the last 2 years, in my opinion, has kind of been his health, right? I think once he went through that series of concussions, it kind of had to change up the way he played a little bit. I think he was a lot more fragile. He was a lot more kind of timid. Not to mention the fact that the Dolphins kind of fell apart, right? They really didn't have a defense to speak of. They didn't protect Tua like they should with an offensive line. So if Tua can stay healthy in Atlanta with all those weapons around him in a good defense, I think you're 100% right. I don't think Tua is a bad quarterback. Do I think he's a great quarterback? No, but the whole point of this argument is that you don't need to be a great quarterback to have success.
Exactly. And you have a great coach. Don't forget who they hired as their head coach, and Kevin Stefanski.
Yeah, I love that move. Love that
good
move.
Quarterback coach. I mean, really, I think Tua got dragged down by Mike McDaniels. Again, not saying Tua is a great quarterback, but I mean, that was a dumpster fire in Miami the last couple seasons with a coach that should have been fired really a year or two ago, who was in so far over his head, who is the quintessential, I'm a coordinator, not a coach guy. I just think Mike McDaniel and the whole mess that was that Miami team the last couple of years dragged Tua down and made him look way worse than he actually is. Okay, he's not Dan Marino, right, but he's good enough to win. He's won in the NFL. He was an MVP contender at different times. And you can say, he had Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Well, look who he's going to be throwing to in Atlanta. He's going to have some really good players. So I love that move. And I would ditto that with Kyler Murray to Minnesota. I don't know what your thoughts on that, but I love that move for Minnesota.
It's a good move. I mean, look, he's got a great receiving core, right? He's got Jefferson and he's got Addison. I love O'Connell in Minnesota. I think he's another really good coach that kind of flies under the radar sometimes. The Vikings defense has been pretty good. And again, Kyler Murray, when Kyler Murray has been healthy, he has been a very good producer. Like I saw something the other day. I think that when Kyler Murray has played, the only quarterback that's like the combination of outpassed him and outrushed him is Josh Allen. I think, correct me if I'm wrong. But Kyler Murray, again, health has been his biggest issue. And I know, people question his commitment, the whole video game thing, the being forced to study the playbook thing. I mean, you know what? Look, the guy's talented, and he's clearly getting an upgrade in roster and coaching by joining the Vikings. So I think that'll be a very interesting landing spot for him.
It's going to be a super interesting landing spot. And the other thing that I think about when I think of that Minnesota situation, and this is another question that I want to see what you think about, is like, doesn't it kind of feel like the Vikings are giving up on JJ McCarthy a little sooner than we expected them to? And what I mean by when I say that is, like, somebody in Minnesota sees something about JJ McCarthy that they don't like. Like they have made, I think, behind closed doors in that organization, a judgment that JJ McCarthy, there's something really wrong there, that they felt like they needed to run out and bring in Kyler Murray after handing McCarthy the keys to the franchise last year. After a few starts this year, they're already ready to bring in a big time insurance policy. So somebody sees something in Minnesota about JJ McCarthy that they don't feel good about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, forget about the fact that they let this recent Super Bowl champion quarterback walk out the door and Daniel Jones walk out the door. Two guys now who look like they're doing just great where they are. For the likes of JJ McCarthy, you can speculate what they see in terms of his long-term capabilities and his talent, and if there's actually, some alarm bells going on behind closed doors. But I think the biggest red flag with JJ McCarthy, and the reason why you bring somebody like Kyler Murray is because the best ability can be availability. And JJ McCarthy has just been a walking injury since he came into the league. He missed his entire rookie year. He was injured with multiple different injuries, his ankle and whatnot throughout last year. They didn't really have a backup. It was the reason why the Viking season fell apart. So I think you have to bring somebody in and say, hey, look, we're not saying that JJ McCarthy is officially done and that, there's no chance of him being a franchise quarterback, but we just need somebody who can play and be healthy.
Yeah, I think it's that, but I think it's more than that too. I really do. Like, I think they saw something in him last year, the way that he played, that made them super concerned. And I think that in that organization right now, in some critical place, there is major doubt around JJ McCarthy's future as an NFL franchise quarterback. And as a Patriots fan, I always watch McCarthy from afar with interest because, hey, let's face it, if Robert Kraft doesn't fire Bill Belichick, I mean, he's probably trading back from like 3 to 8 and drafting JJ McCarthy, and he would have been our guy here.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, look, just statistically, the odds say how many guys from a draft class are going to turn out to be viable NFL quarterbacks, right? And I mean, you see Drake May looks like an NFL quarterback. Caleb Williams looks like an NFL quarterback. Jaden Daniels has shown that he could be an NFL quarterback. So, like, the odds really aren't in JJ McCarthy's favor that everybody from that draft class are going to hit. There's got to be a dud or two,
It's a combination of performance and health, like you said, performance and health. And it's like they don't believe in that player anymore. And I think that's why they bring in a guy like Kyler Murray. And I think Murray will have success in Minnesota at some point. All right. Do you want to talk about the biggest story maybe of the week was the Max Crosby trade being rebuked. Crazy story. My take on this, Justin, and I'd love to hear yours in a second, is that I don't think the Baltimore Ravens did anything wrong in this situation. Do not blame the Ravens, because we, as the fans and the media and everyone, we didn't read the fine print. Everybody that reads the fine print should know that nothing is official until Wednesday at 4 o'clock. Yeah. So when everybody overreacts to all these reports from Schefter and Rappaport and everything, that's on us, not on them. A physical is part of the process. And might I remind everyone in New England that Milton Williams, the guy that kind of just led us to a Super Bowl, was a Carolina Panther on Monday of last year during free agency until he changed his mind on Tuesday and signed with the Patriots. Yep. And thank God for that. Nothing is official until it is official. It is a pre-free agency period. And the Ravens did their due diligence, realized this guy was way more injured than they thought, and backed out. There was nothing wrong on that. Shame on the Raiders for putting themselves in that position.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think the Ravens did what was best for them. And I'll take it a step further, and I think this might be an unpopular opinion, but even if the knee is just a scapegoat, because according to all reports, I mean, Crosby is on track in his recovery. I think he just got I think he just had a procedure recently or something to that effect, right?
A few weeks ago.
He's obviously still recovering. He's not fully healthy. So even if the knee is a scapegoat, maybe they just looked at where they stood and they decided that they would rather pay Trey Hendrickson than give up 2 first-round picks for Max Crosby, because the drop-off between the two really isn't that much of a difference. Trey Hendrickson has been a monster for the last couple of years. He's arguably been just as good as Max Crosby. So if it was a health concern in pending the physical, that was really the reason, I 100% support it. But even if they just had a change of heart and said, hey, we're better off as a franchise paying the money for a guy who's just as comparable instead of giving up the 2 first-round draft picks, I'm okay with that too.
Yeah, I'm 1,000% okay with it. I thought the trade was a huge mistake before we even got into the knee whole situation for the Ravens. And I said, as a Patriots fan, why are we going to trade for Max Crosby and pay him a ton of money and give up a ton of draft capital when Trey Hendrickson is just out there? We can just get him for a free agency contract. It made no sense for the Patriots, and it didn't make sense for the Ravens. And I would point to Justin 2 trades that happened last year. One was Micah Parsons, and the other was Sauce Gardner. And when you put all your eggs and you give up huge multiple first-round picks, draft capital for one guy, and then that guy gets hurt, and it doesn't work out, and it's such a huge setback to your franchise. So I don't know, I don't know what the Ravens were even doing in the first place doing it, but it did make no sense.
No, it made no sense. And again, I actually applaud the Ravens what they did, because I think what they did was the best move for them. You don't want a guy who you're going to give out 2 first-round picks for that is potentially not going to make the recovery that you were hoping for. You don't know what his health status is going to be, right? And I also don't hate saying, hey, let's keep our 2 first-round picks and pay this guy money to come in instead. So yeah, I think the overreaction from people around the league is honestly, it's a little babyish. It's like, this is the NFL.
People saying they should be investigated. They should lose a draft pick. Dude, the physical is part of the process.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a home inspection when you buy a house.
Right. And I've heard people say oh, well, what the Raiders thought that trade had gone through. So then they went out and spent a bunch of money elsewhere. And it's like, same thing. The Raiders went out and spent money before they had sold off their previous assets. So it's like, that's their fault,
It's 100% on the Raiders.
Yeah.
Now, I will say that teams may be skeptical in dealing with the Ravens moving forward, and they may lose some street cred, if you will. And, GMs may think twice about trusting them. And that's something they're going to have to deal with for the way this all shook down. But did they do something wrong? No, they didn't do it. That's crazy talk. They did their due diligence, and let's face it, the guy does have a bum knee. Like, for his surgeon to come out and say he's on schedule, well, that's all well and good, but that still means he's not ready to play yet now, and there's uncertainty around his situation medically going into next year.
Yeah, exactly. At the very least, you don't know what his knee is going to end up like. He's not fully recovered. There's a lot that still needs to happen. A lot of recovery, a lot of rehab. At the best case scenario, you were hoping he would make a full recovery.
Exactly. And you paid a premium price,
right?
A premium price so that you could have that kind of uncertainty.
Yeah.
It's just not worth it.
No,
and it's the same logic for why I don't want AJ Brown. It really, it's the same. You're going to take a guy that kind of paid that premium price for that kind of uncertainty. It doesn't add up. Yeah. Okay. What about any other teams or moves that caught your eye that you really liked this offseason?
I mean, I think the Titans, team like the Tennessee Titans, not a lot of people are talking about them, but I love them bringing in somebody like Wan'Dale Robinson. I loved what they kind of did on the defensive side of the ball. You know, they were aggressive. So I think the Titans are a team that you could potentially watch out for. I've heard rumors that they're going to go take Julian Love with that 4th or 5th pick. I forget which one it is. That could be a totally new look Titans team, especially with, Saleh and Dable, heading up the coaching staff. I mean, the Jets are a team I think you got to talk about, because the Jets, granted, they brought in a lot of vets, a lot of aging guys that I don't think will have much to contribute beyond the next year or two, but they made a big push to beef up that defense. And bringing Geno Smith back. I mean, I'm not saying I think the Jets will be good, but the Jets definitely made a little bit of a splash. And then I think you got to look at what the Raiders did too. The Raiders might, in addition to all the moves that the Raiders made, they might still also have Max Crosby, and then they're bringing in Fernando Mendoza. So I think there's a couple of teams that are going to be interesting to see how things shake out after the draft heading into the offseason.
Listen, I know the Jets beefed up their defensive depth, and I agree with you. They probably made a few solid moves in there. But come on, the Jets bringing back Geno Smith after everything is literally the laughingstock move of the offseason. There is nothing more Jetsy than bringing Geno Smith back. And you know what? I'm going to tell you this right now. Geno Smith has had a good career the last couple of years. You can bet on it. As soon as he puts on that Jets green, he's going to suck again.
Yeah, he probably will. But my only thing, and especially because they're in division, is that if their defense is good and you got a veteran quarterback who has shown in the past that he can, turn it on for a game or two here or there, they become more dangerous. I'm not saying they're going to be a good team, but I'm saying I don't think they will necessarily just be an easy win like they have been.
I honestly, I still think they're an easy win. I
hope
they
so.
go and get a quarterback.
Yeah,
they're an absolute dumpster fire. And Aaron Glenn will be on the hot seat by week 6.
As he should. I mean, I can't even believe he's still there. Should. Do you see the clip of him at the I think it was the combine falling asleep in the in the booth? I mean, oh my God, how embarrassing!
My God. It's just the Jets. It's like a dark comedy. It really is. The Jets are a dark comedy of an NFL franchise.
Seriously.
I'll tell you a couple moves I liked. I liked the Chiefs signing Kenneth Walker III.
Yeah.
I thought that was a good fit for him. They need that stability there. Mahomes will be back sometime in probably week 4 to 8 or something like that. They're going to need a good running game to stay in it until that happens. Even after Mahomes comes back, he's going to have recover from an ACL. I feel like they're going to need to rely on that running game for a little while. And then even when he's 100%, I mean, let's face it, they've been asking too much of him for years. So I thought the Kenneth Walker signing was a great signing for the Chiefs.
Yeah, it was. I mean, let me ask you this. I know Kenneth Walker's getting a lot of hype, Super Bowl MVP. He had a good year last year. Do you think he's that big of an upgrade over the guy they let walk out the door in Isaiah Pacheco?
I do. I mean, yes, I think from what I saw in the Super Bowl this year, I think Kenneth Walker showed that he is a game tilting kind of running back, if there is such a thing in the NFL anymore.
I mean, I definitely think he's a better running back than Pacheco. I'm not sure how much better, but speaking of Pacheco, going to the Lions to replace David Montgomery, I kind of like that move for the Lions because you get a guy who I think is pretty similar in terms of his skill set and ability. He's got some power, but he's a couple years younger, so you basically just kind of refinance the RB2 position over in Detroit.
Yeah, 100%. That's definitely an interesting move. What about DJ Moore to Buffalo? I thought that was a solid move by the Bills. I mean, I think Moore is sort of a distressed asset. I was surprised to see Chicago trade him because it feels like they're doing everything they can to surround Caleb Williams with as much offensive talent as they could. Moore is a good receiver, but I feel like when he gets to Buffalo, he's gonna be in that number one role. And I think he's going to probably, he'd be someone fantasy wise, that I think has a lot of upside.
Yeah, he does. I think that's going to be a good move for Buffalo. DJ Moore to me though, is a guy that I know, a lot of people might think of him as a 1. I think of him as a 1A. Just personally, I know he's a good receiver, but Buffalo has been starving for some talent at the wide receiver position. So I do think they needed to do something. So that was at least, let's put it this way. DJ Moore is probably the best wide receiver heading into free agency.
Yeah, he would be the number one receiver.
I'd take him over Alec Pierce.
110%.
So,
when I take him over Alec Pierce.
Yeah. So I think the Bills, probably got the best upgrade for wide receiver, in terms of offseason moves so far.
Awesome. Agreed. All right, my friend. Anything else you want to add before we wrap it up? I feel like we kind of, in 1 hour, kind of whipped around the league and covered a lot.
We did. Yeah, we covered a lot. A lot's happened, honestly. I mean, there's a bunch of even just like little moves, like things that we haven't talked about, things that might not be big headline moves.
Yeah.
But just a lot of players changing hands, a lot of new coaches. I think it's going to be
Travis Etienne to the Saints. I kind of like that one too.
I like it. I just think the Saints have so many holes beyond running back. I think it's funny that like that was like the hole they chose to plug in free agency was running back, just with all the talent that team's lost. I mean, they just lost to Mario Davis and Alontae Taylor. Like the defense needs work. Like, there's a lot that needs work, but I do like Travis Etienne. I think he's a good running back. So,
I like the quarterback in New Orleans. I think he showed a lot last year, very quietly. I'm telling you, watch out for that New Orleans team this year. Again, soft division, young quarterback that I think has some upside. They brought in a running back in Etienne that I think is going to help. Okay, still a lot of holes. They still got Olave, who I think is a really good receiver in a really bad situation. I'm just saying, like that's a surprise team. Are they going to win the Super Bowl? Probably not. But if you look at them, I don't know what their over under win total is, but it's probably be like 5.5 or 6 or something.
Yeah.
Like that might not be a bad play.
Yeah. Again, that division, I think one of the weaker ones in football too. If there's an opportunity, I would be shocked to see the Saints steal a game or two. So, and then the
7.5 wins for the Saints. That is kind of high.
Oh, that's actually really high.
But that tells you something, right?
It does tell you something. And actually, speaking of that division real quick, I guess we should mention the Panthers, who I think were a surprise team for a lot of people this year. They seem to kind of figure it out. Bryce Young, in that offense played really well. And that defense, I think, was way better than anybody anticipated. And then they went out and they got Jalen Phillips on the edge, and then the linebacker from Jacksonville, whose name is escaping me.
Yeah,
but who was very good. So interesting to see what the Panthers are in 2026.
Yeah, it's good. It's great to get some focus on like everything. Free agency is a huge thing. The draft is great. It's tough because you just don't know who's going to hit and who's going to miss. I feel like the free agency, especially in today's NFL, is like so critical to deciding like who you like and who you don't like. And, I'll say it again. Like, I feel like, look, it's March 14th. I feel like this is the best Patriots team they've had in a long time. I really do. I think this is going to be a better Patriots football team in 2026 and 25. They're not going to win 14 games again. I think they'll win 10 or 11 games. They got a tougher schedule, and luck will be against them in some spots, I'm sure, but they're going to be a really, I think, good competitive team for what I've seen that they've done in free agency. And look, they hit on a draft pick or two. There's no reason this team isn't right in the thick of it again in the AFC.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and we'll obviously talk about this, but even if this Patriots team is better talent-wise than last season, I think their road back to a Super Bowl will be tougher just because of all the breaks that I think went their way, the way the AFC shook out. So at the very least, it'll be interesting, and I do expect this Patriots team to still be, a 10 to 12 win team, be back in the playoffs and have a chance to make a run.
100%, Justin. Well, all right, anything else you want to add before we wrap it up, my friend?
No, that's it. It's just funny to, you said today's March 14th, and I'm thinking we got pretty much 6 long months probably until week 1. So the dark period begins.
Don't discount the value of entertainment value of training camp.
No, I know.
Even though it sucks in some ways, it's something it's entertaining, you know.
Yeah, we get the draft in April, camp starts.
Schedule comes out, camp starts, summer. There's other sports. I'm pumped for the Red Sox. That starts in 12 nights. I can't wait to see baseball. So there's a lot to be thankful for. And, football season will be here before you know it. I never wish away summer.
No, yeah, that's true. And Celtics looking good. So yeah, we got
and
plenty.
You got a baby coming, so you're going to be busy the next few months.
Exactly. So who knows? Maybe the next 6 months will fly for me because that's all
I'm sure
hearing.
they will.
Yeah,
I'm sure they will. Well, listen, want to thank everyone that listened to this edition of the Ultimate Patriots Podcast. Please find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. Check us out. Follow us. This is the best place to be for just 1 hour every week or so on commercial-free Pats content. Thank to everyone that listened. Be good, and God bless my father one more time. Rest in peace, Dad, and I will catch you all soon with another episode. Be good, everyone.